At the end of this video, you should be able to confidently answer this question. Intents are actions that the bot can perform. Is this true or false? An important part of the configuration that you do for your chatbot is the setting up of intents. This is the big picture of the flow of conversation that occurs when you interact with the chatbot built in Dialogflow. When you create your chatbot, you know what its purpose is going to be. What are the user requests that it's going to fulfill? What is the information that it's going to retrieve for the user? What are the database updates that it will do on behalf of the user? All that I just described are actions that your backend server code can execute. Intents are what you configure within your Dialogflow agent to determine what action your code needs to take. Which of these list of actions is the one that your code needs to invoke in response to a user query? The intent is ultimately just a mapping. The actual action is taken by your software, and intent maps the user request to what action your software should execute on behalf of the user. When configuring an intent, there are four sections that you need to consider. The first is the user says section. These are the expressions, text fragments, or phrases that the user will use to communicate with your bot, which will actually map or invoke this particular intent. These are things that you have to configure and they become part of your machine learning model for this bot. The more user expressions that you specify, the more natural your conversation with the bot will be. The second section that you need to configure is the action section. The action is simply a string which gives some indication to the software running on the back end what series of actions have to be executed by that software in response to the user's query. Let's say the action were book flight, then at the back end, your code knows that it needs to parse the user's detail from the request and then actually make a flight booking. This might require updating a database. Another section that you need to configure is the response that this intent will send back to the user. Now, this response can come directly from the server code that's running to fulfill your user's request. Or if your intent doesn't hit the server code at all, and there are definitely intents which work that way, then you need to configure this text response within the Dialogflow agent itself. And finally, one of the sections that you might want to configure is the context. The context refers to the environment in which the dialogue or the conversation with your bot occurs. This environment contains other information that the user might have given the chatbot, which you need to know within this particular intent. We'll set up two custom intents in our trip planner Dialogflow agent. The first intent is the book rooms intent, which extracts all the information needed from the user in order to perform a room booking at the back end. You can think of this as Expedia, TripAdvisor, or any other booking site. If they had a chatbot, they would definitely have a book rooms intent. And the second custom intent that we'll set up is the book cars intent. If you're planning a trip, in addition to a room to stay in, you might also want to book a car that you want to drive around in that city. Book cars intent will handle exactly that. Within your Dialogflow UI, click on Intents on the left navigation pane, and this should take you back to the intent screen where our two default intents have already been set up. We are going to set up our very first custom intent, that is the first mapping between what the user might say and what action our server software might perform. Click on the Create Intent button, and this will take you to a screen which looks like this, which you can use to fill in all the details of the intent. We'll start off with the intent name, and this is the intent that we'll use to book cars. We'll just create the intents for now. Go ahead and hit save, and notice that the gear icon on the top left is spinning. Your machine learning model is being updated. Click on the plus next to the intents link in order to create a new intent. We'll now set up the book rooms intent. Once again, we keep this simple for now. We simply specify the name of the intent and go ahead and hit save. Now, a question for you. I've set up the intent to book rooms and book a car. Can I actually perform these actions now? Will this Dialogflow agent allow me to use the test pane on the right to book a room or book a car? Let's try it. Well, it was pretty obvious that I asked for a car, but my agent didn't really understand what it was that I wanted. And notice the intent that was invoked was not the book car's intent, it was instead the default fallback intent, which is called when your agent can't understand what it was the user said. Huh, so that didn't really work. How about if I want to book a hotel room? What does the agent have to say then? It asked me to repeat what I said. And once again, the intent that was invoked was the default fallback intent. The book room's intent was not invoked. It's pretty clear from the interactions that we just saw that actually just setting up an intent is not sufficient to perform the action at the back end. It requires actual code to run. That is code that you need to specify and that you need to link up to this particular intent. Since we haven't done that, we can't really book a room or book a car. And this leads us right to the question that we asked at the beginning of this video clip. Intents are actions that the bot can perform. The answer here is false. Intents are not actions, they're instead mapping of user requests to actions that need to be executed at the back end. Intents are just the mappings. The actual action needs to be executed by the code that you host on a server somewhere, which accesses the database and does all the bookkeeping needed to book a car or to book a room.